Right. So we're here to talk about going beyond boundaries. And when I was thinking about going beyond boundaries, there were two stories that I was reminded of. They're personal to me. One of them meant that I could really pick up life lessons, while the other one was more around leadership lessons. So let me start sharing some of these stories that I experienced myself, and they influenced my thought and actions as I started thinking about what could be boundaries and limitations that would have otherwise challenged me. And they say this, that boundaries are perceptions unless proven otherwise. The first story is, this is going way back to college. I was someone who was very low on self-confidence, in all transparency. And this was my first day in college. And I remember at Pune University, there were about 200, 250 odd students trying to enter the auditorium. I'd saved my pocket money and purchased an extremely good-looking, that's what I felt, satin black shirt. But I just didn't have the confidence, after getting dressed, to enter into the auditorium. And then I saw this person who was sitting right outside the auditorium on a wheelchair. And he was looking at almost everyone and, flashing an extremely attractive smile. I mean, even till date, I remember that smile. He's no longer amongst us in person. He departed, planet Earth a few years back. But I've never felt his absence. That's how powerful that, that resemblance and that relationship became. Now, what truly, happened is I just couldn't find the confidence to get inside the auditorium. And then I sort of, I don't know what, I got a voice from inside and I said, let me go and say hi to this individual, because it seems like, this person is looking at everyone and smiling, but I have no idea who is this individual. I asked him, hey, what's your name? He said, Melvin. And I said, good to see you. I'm Vinay, and I'm a student here, first year. He said, yeah, even I'm a first year student. I said, okay, so then why are you not entering the auditorium? He said, I was looking for someone to see that I'm actually on a wheelchair and take me inside. And that's when his presence became my cloak of confidence, and I took him inside the auditorium. And what became, the start of a friendship, really, over the course of next few years. And what I discovered in the course of next few years, really spending time with Melvin, is just these sort of limitations that I would have never anticipated in my life for a person with disability to be on a wheelchair. And by the way, Melvin was an absolutely fine individual prior to a motorbike accident, 6 feet 2 inches, very smart looking individual, and suddenly met with an accident and he got paralyzed from waist down. But that never deterred his determination. I mean, one of the things that he would tell me is, when I wake up every day, I feel as if it's the first day of the rest of my life. And then I decide, how is it that I'm going to face life moving forward from here? And that's what led to probably him flashing that sort of smile. I cannot but start and describe the sort of challenges that I would have experienced being with him as somebody, his best friend, being on the first bench in the same class. There would be instances where he would have to answer nature's call and he would just not know, which meant that he had to design his life as per a certain discipline. What time he wakes up, what time does he go and get fresh, what time does he have his breakfast, what time does he have his lunch, what time does he have to get back into bed. In addition to that, for somebody who is 6 feet 2 inches, there's just a lot that your body goes through when you're on a wheelchair, really, right? And often, one of the things that I would ask him, when we go for these interviews, trying to get a job in a company, they ask us this question, what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses? He asked me this question one day, what do you think should I answer when they ask me this question? I said, if someone asks you, looking at you, what are your strengths and weaknesses? I think that person really needs to understand what's the meaning of weakness, really. Because I remember having accompanied him for many, job interviews that would happen at college. And I can tell you honestly, there were a lot of interviews that he got rejected from without being told why was he being rejected. And we clearly knew why was he being rejected. But there was this one HR consultancy firm which came on campus. And then, eventually he did get hired in that company, only to then give jobs to a lot of our batchmates actually in a few years' time. So extremely inspirational story. And one of the things that I pretty much picked up is, here I was, not confident to enter in an auditorium with about 250 people, very worried about how do I look, how am I going to be able to adjust and integrate within the audience. And here there was another individual who had least of that as his concerns. In fact, what he was really looking forward to is the choice of life and the choice of how he lives life with whatever that he had at that point in time. That was more of a mindset shift that I feel he made happen. The second story, and this one's again very personal, it's a leadership experience that I gained fairly early in my career. It's a story in people management, it's a story in being accessible to the people you lead. But this was my first job, and it was my first international trip to Hong Kong. And I was traveling with one of my senior leaders in the organization. He was someone that I looked up to. I even look up to him today. And he was someone that a lot of people felt as a real role model in the organization. Funnily enough, both of us were at Delhi airport, and he looked at me and he said, "So you're excited?" I said, "Yes, it's my first international trip." And he said, "Wow, I go back to my days when I finished my MBA and I joined a corporate firm, and then I went out of India." And that's just the brief bit of conversation we had. He was obviously sitting in business class, and I was in the economy class. And here's where you start thinking, right, that you will have differences between people when they are hierarchically different in organizations. When we got down at Hong Kong airport, for some strange reason, I was pulled up by the immigration folks there. I wasn't sure what happened. I was just hurriedly rushed into the immigration space, and they said, "Sit down." I didn't know Mandarin or Chinese then, and they didn't know good enough English, so I wasn't sure why was I stuck there. I was stuck there for probably about an hour and a half, only for me to realize that the person at the immigration airport in India forgot to actually stamp my passport. So for them to prove how did this person actually land in Hong Kong was the question that they wanted to sort of get an answer to. Eventually they let me off after an hour and a half, thinking, okay, this is his first international trip. The person really seems like a kid who's flying for the first time, and he had all the documents in place. When I stepped outside, I was obviously concerned. My first trip, I don't know where my baggage is going to be. And I went near the baggage lane, and I saw this leader there standing with my bag. And I said, "What are you doing here?" He said, "They took you inside. I noticed it. So I decided to wait for you." And at that moment, I said to myself, listen, this person is an extremely senior leader in a Fortune 100 organization. He's got years of experience. He doesn't manage me directly. He's a leader in the organization. And what motivation did he have to wait for me when he knew that he could have just caught his cab and left for his hotel and then carried forward with whatever his schedule looked like? And I asked him, "Why did you do it?" And he just looked at me and he said, "Why not?" I didn't get the answer to it then, but in years from then, when I started to connect the dots, I realized this is how you show up. I realized that he knew it was my first trip. He knew I was just still getting acclimatized to the whole excitement of traveling to a foreign nation for the first time. And he definitely was concerned. This person's from the same organization. If I just leave him alone here, if he gets to know that I've left him alone, what would he carry as a perception about me being a leader in the organization? To me, that became a life lesson. To me, that became a leadership lesson. To me, that became a lesson of how do we really represent ourselves when we are managing people, when we are managing relationships really. As I come back and I think about going beyond boundaries really, right? We said boundaries are perceptions. I think boundaries are also either what we see, what we feel, or what we create. And often, we get carried away and create a lot of boundaries. For instance, this person is junior. Oh, I'm on a wheelchair, I might probably not be able to do what a lot of people are doing. But the two folks that I mentioned, and the reason why they became life lessons for me, is because they made a choice. And the choice that they made is they first fixed their mindset, saying, I am not going to let all of these small myths, all of these small misunderstandings to come and cloud my judgment, or what should I do as a choice, as the right thing, when I'm supposed to make a decision. I think if I go back and I start thinking, like I said, a lot of my thoughts and my actions are now driven by how I think about making a choice. And to me, it all comes down, if you really want to go beyond the boundary, it's the choices that you make. So it's about the inspiration that you can actually get from these stories, and the choices that you will make. Thank you.